Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of the 1 vs 1 show. If you're new to the show, this is the show where I take on guests from the amateur Call of Duty community. And this week, we have none other than IHOLDSHIFT, not an amateur, I guess semi-pro, Call of Duty caster, caster in various esports, I guess. You're not just a caster in Call of Duty, you do a bit of Rocket League, and I think you used to do Overwatch on the side as well. I don't know if you still do.
Yep.
Yeah. So, a man of many talents, I think it's fair to say. And, of course, I think the majority of people will definitely know who you are watching this video. But Shift, for those of you who do not know who you are and have been living under a rock for the past couple of years, please introduce yourself for us.
Oh, wonderful. I will. So my name is Alan. I hold shift. Call me whichever you feel like. I've been casting on and off since like 2011, but it was more off than on up until about 2 years ago, where I decided that if I was going to really give this a go, I had to give it everything. And that's when I had kind of moved away from what I initially was doing was Paladins, which is a high-res game. Most of you will know it as an Overwatch ripoff, which is relatively accurate. And after that whole kind of thing fell apart, I started getting into Overwatch, like you mentioned. That was actually correct. And then also jumped into Black Ops 4 was my first Call of Duty that I started to cast. And the other little bit of trivia is I actually had not even played like a multiplayer Call of Duty since Call of Duty 4, and that was mouse and keyboard, PC, like.
Was that Pro Mod COD 4? Or is that like...
That was Pro Mod COD 4, yeah.
That's crazy.
Pro Mod COD 4, and I was a semi-pro player for that, and then I got involved with a bunch of music stuff, and then I eventually found my way back, and now I'm also kind of doing a little bit of Rocket League. I do Apex whenever there's an opportunity, which there aren't too many. And hopefully, obviously, like everybody else out there, I'm trying to get my feet wet a little bit with Valorant when it drops, so... I'm just trying to do as much as
that.
Everybody's trying to do that. Yeah, you're not wrong. So doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess that covers the first question, how you got into esports, because 2011, that's very far back. That's like I guess in Call of Duty terms, for those young'uns here, that's Modern Warfare 3 times, right? I mean, like that's a long time ago. So for that period, I mean, where did you start in esports, right? Is that the period of you starting? Because obviously you say you played Pro Mod Call of Duty 4, which puts you at a timeline of 2008. But is there a before 2008?
No, not really. So it's funny. The first time I my first actual competitive game that I ever played, and it was only because like it wasn't like I formed a team and like competed. It was just like this is the game that I saw and was like, this is fun. I'm going to actually try to get good at it. Was SOCOM, like third-person shooter, PS2, SOCOM, like literally. The meme there was green up because you had like a little red or a green circle depending on when you were readying up, and so the whole thing was to G up, get greened up when you're ready to go. That was the first game that I ever played that was a shooter that I was like, I'm gonna try to play this and do well at it. And then the year after that, this was like 2005. In 2006, I marched a lot of competitive drumline when I was a kid. It was 2006 to 2007. I was marching this group in Indianapolis. We were a world-class ensemble. I was on the bass line, and I came into rehearsal one day, and the guy that marched bass drum 4, who was right behind me, I marched bass drum 3, he was, like, pissed, like, the entire day. And I was like, Josh, what's wrong? He's like, no! It's stupid. Just don't. I want to talk about it. And I was like, bro, what the heck? He's like, no, it's a stupid free-to-play game, shooter, and his stupid stuff happened last night. And he turned me on to this game. It was called Soldier Front. Literally the, like, biggest knockoff of like Counter-Strike you've ever seen in your life, and we played the living hell out of that game, and that got me into a cycle of playing competitively in a bunch of free-to-play FPSs. It was literally like the definition of dead game warrior. You jumped on a free-to-play FPS, you played it for as long as there was a player base, and then a new one would come out and everyone would go to that one. So you'd play that, but like I said, this was while I was actually marching. So to finalize the whole point of how I got into esports, I stopped playing games competitively right around 2008, 2009. So COD 4 Pro Mod was like the last game that I had like played competitively. But I was also playing a couple of free-to-play FPSs, and one of the tournament organizers was hosting this national qualifier where there was like Europe had a national qualifier, North America had a national qualifier, and everyone who qualified, like top 2, would go to Korea, which is where the game studio was off of, and it was like a Korean LAN with like 6 teams. And one of the tournament organizers I knew pretty personally was like, would you want to like try to shoutcast this tournament since you're not playing in it and you know everybody, you know all the teams, you know the game? And I was like, yeah, why not? I'll give it a go. And solo casted for like 8 hours, had never casted before, never practiced it, didn't even barely know what it was. And I got a ton of positive feedback. Like, dude, you're actually pretty good at this. And that turned into getting contacted by this group called the CSN, which is like Cyber Sports Network. Oddly enough, the guy that like helped run that was who is now running Character Select Agency, the CSA agency, and Andrew. And so I actually met Andrew through that, and they were hosting the tournaments for a bunch of free-to-play games and like StarCraft and stuff like that at QuakeCon in Dallas. And that was my first like live event, and that was 2011. So ever since then, you know, I kind of kept it as a back burner thing. I went to school as an educator, didn't find a job teaching, and ended up just kind of getting opportunities more and more to do casting stuff until I eventually tried to make it a full-time thing. It's pretty nuts.
So when did you decide that you were going to make it a full-time thing? Because you came into COD at the start of Call of Duty Black Ops 4. It feels like you've been in it for much longer. I think it's fair to say. You've put yourself now as a stalwart of casting Call of Duty, at least in America. Definitely you're sort of the number one outside of the CDL, right? But for you, when did you start to make sort of casting a big thing? Sort of like what, COD time or before that?
So it's interesting. So again, like I was telling you, like I graduated with a social studies degree. So that was my whole idea, was to teach social studies. At least in America, if you don't teach math or science,
is that like sociology or like what kind of social studies?
Yeah, so sociology, U.S. history, world history, politics and government, that whole thing. Those are my focus areas that I was certified in. But if you don't teach math or science here, like the value on like language arts teachers and social studies or social sciences, however you want to call it, not a lot of investment when it comes to those type of teachers. So I never found a job, and I again was kind of bouncing in between substitute teaching and serving tables and stuff like that. And I was working at a really nice restaurant here in town. But while I was doing that, I was also playing a game called Realm Royale, another high-res game at a very high level, and eventually got to the point where Hi-Rez was running on a weekly basis $10,000 tournaments. Me and my duo were finishing top 5 almost every single week. And then Keemstar was running those $100,000 tournaments. And the first one was like just all content creators. But between the first and the second one, Hi-Rez kind of slaughtered their own game and nobody came back to play it again. So when he put the second one out, there was only like 30 people that were content creators, kind of, that wanted to play. And so for the other 70 slots, there was no one to fill in. So Hi-Rez decided that the people that had been playing well at the 10,000s would get in qualified to get into the Keemstar tournament so they could fill out their whole roster. So I had the chance to play for the $100,000 tournament, and me and my duo ended up winning it. So after that had happened, my stream blew up. I started making YouTube content for Realm. I was doing it on a regular basis. I was streaming 8-10 hours a day. But then Hi-Rez again just slaughtered their game and kind of went to a point where no one was playing, no one was watching. It wasn't fun to play anymore. And after the Keemstar tournament, I quit my serving job. I was like, look, I'm going to go full-time content creator. I've got all this money now saved in the bank. I don't have to work. I could try to make the whole content creator thing work. And at the time, I was still casting Paladins. And then the Paladins thing kind of fell apart and Realm kind of died. And I was like, well, shit, I've got all this money saved up, paid off my student loans. What do I do from here? Like, do I just go back to serving tables? And I made the decision that, I've done esports casting. I did all the major events that were there for Paladins. They were trying to bring me in regularly. And I was like, that was always going to be kind of a dead end at some point. Because, again, Paladins is very small in the scheme of esports. And I was like, well, what would be the opportunity for me to really get involved with a bigger esport? And my first reaction was Overwatch because it was a similar game.
Which you did
and
have,
then the second,
right? A small stint in Overwatch.
Yeah, I did Chinese contenders, EU trials. It was right on the cusp. Like, if you've got your Overwatch League casters, then you've got your NA and your EU contenders casters, and then you've got, like, the block of, like, a circle of people that did South America and China and the Open Division. And I was right in the middle of that. So, it was fun. I had a really good time. And I think as a caster, I grew a lot while doing it. But the other game that I saw an opportunity in was Call of Duty because there was nobody doing YouTube content. Like at that point, Rab had just essentially started at like the beginning of Black Ops 4. He had done like the roster mania stuff between World War II and Black Ops 4. And that was like his first little peak that he started to have. And I was like, well, shit, like he does good content, but it's different from what I want to do. And no one else is doing it. So I'll give this a go. I'll just reach out to people as I see tournaments come up. I'll try to cast it, try to get to know people. And, you know, now a year and a half later, here we are. So,
and that's a big jump. Big jump as well. I mean, from just
a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that you have put a lot of time into casting Call of Duty, and like I said before, you are now the top, I guess, amateur, semi-pro, whatever the sort of the tag or the label you want to go with, Call of Duty caster in North America, or even I guess the world, because I don't necessarily think anybody has a bigger reach than you do outside, considering the YouTube channel that you do have. I do want to talk about the YouTube channel though, because the YouTube channel for you is, like you said, it's kind of like, it's one of the only places that currently serves constant Call of Duty content alongside
right now,
Rab. I think Kingdom Soldier's back now doing content. I might be wrong in saying that.
I haven't seen any of his stuff in quite some time, mostly because, like you mentioned, he kind of took a little bit of a hiatus, it felt like. But if that's true, I'll definitely go back and check that out because I love his content too.
But for you and your YouTube channel, how important is that to you and sort of your contribution to Call of Duty? Because obviously, like I said, it's massive. It has a draw for its people. I mean, where do you sort of see your own YouTube channel?
So for me, it's a weird battle because, like, would I like to be doing videos every single day and committing to like doing the kind of production that I like to do? I think ideally yes, but at the same point, you know, the YouTube channel for me was a door that I could open up into that world, because going and just casting never felt like it was going to be enough. And that was one thing I took away very quickly once I started getting into Overwatch, because I had started doing Overwatch right around like the early parts of the fall of 2018. And I didn't really get momentum in Call of Duty until about February or so. So like that entire fall and winter, I was mostly focused on doing stuff in Overwatch. And I quickly realized that the people that have the biggest identifiable names and personalities are people that are doing a lot of content outside of just showing up, you know, on stream. You know, you talk about the talking heads, you know, Bren and Sideshow have obviously some of the biggest personalities of the Overwatch League, and they do very well with their live stream on Twitch. They do very well with YouTube and their podcast and stuff like that. And a lot of feedback that I took away from people like Golden Boy, who I talked to at that time pretty regularly, as well as a couple of other people that were kind of making it in the scene, was you will not just make it into a major scene like this without building a personality in a different department than just time that you spend casting. And once I kind of figured that out, you know, I noticed that, okay, Overwatch YouTube, everyone's doing it. It's very difficult to just do videos and instantly get views. It wasn't necessarily that way in Call of Duty because there wasn't a lot of it. So for me, that was the door that I opened. Was my YouTube channel, it was just there to get a little bit of notoriety, a little bit of recognition, and a way to hopefully put out a good enough production where people would say, all right, this guy's taking this seriously. And I remember the first day that it really felt like it all clicked. Out of nowhere, Revan tweeted on Twitter one of my videos and like gave me all the gas in the world that like, I've been watching this guy for months. He's out of nowhere. His video content is incredible. And I messaged John. I was like, Bobble, where the hell did this come from? And he was like, dude, your content is incredible. And I've watched you cast. At that point, it was like the CCL. And I was like, you've got a lot of chops. Like, keep going. And I was like, hell yeah. But for me now, you know, I like to focus more on the esports side of things. You know, it's been really fun watching Rab explode, especially during the off season when he was doing a lot of his rumors videos. But for me, that's just not the style of content that I enjoy doing. I like doing predictions and power rankings, statistic-based work that makes it feel like a show that you might see on like ESPN rather than just a guy in front of a webcam talking about whatever the spiciest stuff was for the day. So for me, like, I haven't put a video up on my YouTube channel in Call of Duty since the end of LA. That was the last time, because there hasn't been any content to make it on because there's been no CDL. So for me, it's something to do as like a secondary hobby. And I think it's still a good venue, and I've got ideas in place. You know, I'm starting to start up a thing called First Touch, which I'm going to do a lot of recap stuff for Rocket League. And I've got things in the works to try to do for Valorant as well. But again, it's not one of those things that I'm looking at my YouTube channel as this is my full-time pursuit. Casting is still the main goal. So I try to fill my schedule up with more casting opportunities rather than filling it up with making YouTube content, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, you don't want to just chuck out sort of average content. If it's more quality than quantity, right? I mean, that's sort of the aim you're going for. You did touch on something I do want to talk about there. You mentioned the CCL, the College Call of Duty League. I think something that you have somewhat become synonymous with over the past couple of years. It has been, I think, one of your pet projects as well, right? Because you've had a job
in a way.
I don't know if you actually founded the CCL, but you definitely have had a huge hand in, I guess, guiding it, because I think working with you on the CCL this season, it's definitely great to see sort of the hand that you have in guiding the CCL and sort of molding it into something that's amazing. To be honest, it's easily the best. And this is just for everyone at home, maybe because in Europe, maybe you don't watch the CCL. The CCL is easily the best produced Call of Duty esports stream outside of the CDL. Like, there's no competition, 100%. And a lot of that is down to just the incredible team behind it. Like, just seeing the huge team of people that all do various different things and all put all of their time into a project like that is just insane. And for you, Shift, with the CCL, I mean, how important is that to you? Where did you get involved with the CCL?
So this kind of goes back to how I got a little bit of a push to do more stuff with casting. Was the backstory was there was this online tournament called the G3 circuit, and it was a PC Call of Duty Black Ops 4 system, PC only, because I don't know if you remember after World War II there was this whole esports for Call of Duty is going to change, and everyone was like, it's coming to PC, and I was like, I don't think so, but I'll kind of see if that's the case. And the G3 circuit ran like 2 tournaments. It was all PC based, and I casted both of them. And a couple of the guys that were involved with G3 ended up kind of turning me on, like, have you seen the college COD stuff that's also going on? And at that point, they had just gotten done doing season 0, which was a World War II season, and it only had like 8 teams. It was really small. And they did a couple of things in the fall, and I remember tuning into like a fall Black Ops 4 tournament. And I was like, I wonder who these guys are that are casting, because they were okay, but you could tell that they were not casters. Like, they didn't have the experience. Yeah. They didn't have a lot of, trade value in like having done it for, maybe they hadn't done it for a long time. I wasn't sure. I don't even remember who it was that I watched cast. I think it was like Stens and J-Pros. And they did fine. Like, and that's funny to you because you know who both of them are now. But at the time, I had no idea who these guys were. And they did fine. Like, it was good, but I was like, I feel like this is an opportunity. And so I reached out to them and ended up like putting together a small reel. They brought me in, and for season 1, they had gone from 8 teams to 32 teams. And at that point, J Pros is running production and casting.
Oh, hold on, Shift. Sorry, guys. The audio's just cut out for whatever reason. Give me a second. I will fix this.
Oh, I hit the mute button on accident.
It's all good. We're all good here. We're all good. Let's flick that back.
What was the last thing I said? I don't even know.
You said talk about J Pros getting you on. So J Pros moving to.
So J Pros, he was doing all the production with like live running the stream. Wong was the guy that made all of the graphics package alongside Marco for the actual like production assets, like the graphics suite that they use for it. And I remember looking at what they had built, and I was like, holy smokes, like, this is very much so a real thing. Like, these guys are putting in a lot of the effort. At that point, I was just on to cast with J-Pros at the time.
Yep.
And we were doing the best that we could. It's just the 2 of us with him running the stream, and I thought we did a really good job with it. And that's where things started to kind of pick up for me as, like, a caster, because around late February, we had done a Friday Night Fight, which we unfortunately haven't done it all this year, but it was supposed to be like showcase matches if people wanted to throw challenges at each other, like kind of like what your current like fist bump challenges are right now in the pro community. It was like that for College COD. And we had the 2 teams that were in the grand finals from season 0 rematching on Black Ops 4. And we had got Benson to come on and cast.
I remember that very vividly.
That was the first time that, like, okay, I have to have my A game on. Like, this is casting with a CWL caster at that time. I was super nervous, but Benson was super awesome about it. And, you know, he gave me a couple of pointers and had some positive things to say and all of that. And that's where that Friday Night Fights is where everything changed, because we had like 700 people watching. I had probably gained about 200 followers on Twitter, a bunch new subs on YouTube. And that's when Checkmate Gaming, actually, they were watching. And Rolo reached out to me in DMs like, hey, do you freelance commentate COD? And I said, yes, I do. And that's how things kind of started when talking with CMG about starting to bring their live stream. So that was like the breaking tipping point moment, was that Friday Night Fights. And since then, College COD has gone from 32 teams to almost 80 in this season. And we're going to have a 32-team playoff. And the graphics package, I don't know how Wong keeps making it better, but he keeps making it better. And yeah, if you have not watched College COD, you're about to want to, because the end of April, beginning of May, it's going to be some insane matches coming up.
We got playoffs. Sure. It's going to be great.
It's going to be nuts.
I'll be casting it, so watch it. So will George, right? We should probably announce that. But George is there. George is going to be there. He's going to be casting it too. So two of the members of the Beyond the Call team are going to be there casting it. So don't miss it. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't have any threats. I don't have any threats to hand out to you guys. I'm grateful for everyone watching this as it is. But yeah, so that's CCL. And as you say, that opened up a number of doors for you. As you say, you got the chance to cast a Benson. It gave you a market improvement in your own casting. And of course, beyond that, it gave you a bump in following. Now, not only did it open those doors, but I think a huge springboard potentially, and of course, in addition to YouTube, to, I think, one of the biggest moments in your career so far, which is you getting the chance to cast CWL Anaheim in 2019. I know how getting Call of Duty, I know how getting esports jobs works, but just talk me through sort of the moment that you got the email to cast Anaheim.
It wasn't even an email. It was a Twitter DM.
You got a DM?
It was a Twitter DM from the Open Stream producer Will Abreu, who to this day I cannot speak highly enough. He's incredible. But yeah, it was a Twitter DM that he had sent me initially, asking if I was interested in possibly having a conversation about working at CW Anaheim. Of course, I said yes, and that's when a couple of emails were brought in. But it was a strange event, because I don't know how much of this was like public knowledge at the time.
Is this like the massive scuff of like talent, as in like the amount of people that they had to get in like Rota and stuff?
Yes. But the reason why was the weirdest thing. So we were doing rehearsals on that Thursday, and I just knew that Spaceman and Al were going to be there. I had before the event, I was in a Twitter DM with Chris, Bryce, Onset, Tactical Rab, and myself, and it was like, I don't even know if I'm supposed to talk about this.
You can talk. I think you can talk about this. Is like behind.
I think it's like it wasn't like a behind closed doors thing. It was just kind of like it was a whole thing. I'll kind of explain it in short, but I was in this group DM, and I thought it was just like people they wanted to like hang out with and stuff. Like, we're gonna all be at the Open. We're all gonna be at the CDO Open in Anaheim. You know, we should all like try to get some stuff together. And then I quickly realized like, oh, is like Onset gonna be casting, because his name wasn't in the email that had been shared with all of the information as far as like logistics and itinerary. And the whole reasoning behind it was there was a visa thing that was going on, because it wasn't just a work visa. They had to get like a special talent visa, like what like professional athletes would be working on essentially. And that was why they brought in Space and Allie. They were like very last minute. I had no idea, and I didn't realize the severity of it until it was almost Bryce and Chris who almost weren't able to work that event. So we were about to, at one time, we did like a good 30 minutes of rehearsal of me hosting the desk, and Space and Allie were casting. It was going to be that three in those roles for the entire weekend at one point in time. Like, it very well could have been.
Yikes.
And I've never been more stressed in my life, because I looked up to Bryce and Chris the entire time I was coming through the scenes. So for them to be there and then maybe not was like
crazy. Yeah, I mean that's a big like networking opportunity as well that you could have potentially missed, because obviously, as you say, I think at that point in time, Ton and Bryce had become the face of open Call of Duty, even though they might not have wanted to be so. They definitely had sort of become the face of what is now Challengers, and you might have not got the chance to cast with them, or at least work with them, because I think I don't know if Bryce did any casting. But I remember, I think Ton definitely did
a couple.
Did. Oh, he did the final.
He did the final, and he did, I think, the winners final as well. That was because again they were relying on him to host because
he's the one with the hosting, like the hosting. I mean, I know he's not keen on it, but like he's the one out of everyone on that lineup who has the most experience hosting a desk, and he's very good at it as well. I should add that.
I will say flat out that he is very good at it.
I've always said that. I've always said, like, if I was to say that anyone should deserve a job hosting, like I think Bryce would be it, even though I think he prefers casting. Regardless of that, though, you almost got a whole weekend of Spaceman casting all of the games. That would have been fucking terrible. I'm kidding, Sean. If Sean watches it, I am sorry. But yeah, like,
holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible, right? Because I think for you, that is exactly the definition of a meteoric rise. From jumping into Call of Duty at the start of Call of Duty Black Ops 4 to creating content on YouTube to joining the CCL and then straight into the CWL. I mean, that's a dream, right? That's a dream job.
It's funny that you mentioned that because that was the goal. Like when I set
100%.
myself into doing Call of Duty, especially Call of Duty, I was like, look, like here's the schedule of the open events. I want to be at least a consideration by the time that Anaheim rolls around.
Well,
that was where I set my goal at. It was like, I'm going to make content, I'm going to cast, I'm going to do whatever I possibly can to be a consideration by the time that Anaheim rolls around. So the fact that it was not just a consideration, but the opportunity, you know, it again, you know, the launching platform was that Friday Night Fights night, but then getting the chance to do stuff with Checkmate Gaming and all the stuff that the CMG guys have allowed me to do with the elites, you know, that quickly turned into, after Anaheim, the scouting grounds, which is massive as far as, you know, an opportunity to cast over teams that were going to be at World Championships. You know, yeah, that like everything just kind of started in one spot. But Anaheim was the weekend where everything felt like the things that I set out to do, I did. And my head's on, you know, to a point where I am realistic, obviously, in some way about what my goals are and how I can reach them. So it was a lot of euphoria, I feel like, just to be at that event after, again, 6 months previously. And that's the day on the calendar that I put the X on, you know, proverbially, as far as this is the day that I want to be a consideration. And so, yeah, it definitely felt like the reward was tangible enough to, you know, obviously know what I'm capable of, but beyond that, know that I'm able to set myself realistic goals, which I think no matter what you do in life, whether it's in esports or, you know, personal set goals, if you could get to a point where you realize a goal like that, at least at that time, it was, again, it was like the dream. I remember sitting and talking to Chris at one point. I was like, this is the dream right here. He's like, no, it's not. That's the dream. And he pointed at the CWL desk. And I was like, well, I mean, you're right. But right now, this was the dream.
This is the goal, right? One step at a time.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, for anyone out there that's trying to set themselves goals, I think you just need to take the time to assess, you know, where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses, and how can you find a way to set a best path. And, you know, I've had the fortunate chance to see that be realized a couple of different times in my life, but that one in specific was really, really massive for me. Because, again, you know, I'm still sitting at home, not essentially making money off of a real job. And it can be really difficult, you know, mentally to try to figure out, you know, is this worth it? And at that point in time, it showed myself, it showed my friends, it showed my family that, you know, everything that I've been doing has turned up to be worth it so far. So, yeah, it was a very rewarding moment.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say you did very well at Anaheim. I think everyone loved the casting. I think, like, for me personally, and this isn't a knock on anybody else who did open that year, I think Anaheim for me was like peak sort of, this is how an open desk or who care about challenges, because I think you obviously had you who clearly, I think anybody who knows you personally or even just knows you at face value, have seen you on a stream or even subscribes to your YouTube channel, they know that you care deeply about amateur Call of Duty and sort of the scene. You had Spaceman, who has spent years casting amateur Call of Duty, and then of course fronting the desk. You had Ton and Bryce, who are just incredible at every event, regardless of what they do. They are brilliant. And then, of course, in addition to that, you have Ali Cat, who's a great analyst and who had experience playing the game. So it's kind of nice to have that added in there too. So I think it's fair to say that Anaheim was a great moment, I think, for everybody in terms of the year. And also the storylines were fucking insane. Like a lot of what was going on.
That was a fun event.
Yeah, a lot of what was going on at that time in terms of actual Call of Duty was pretty good. But I guess from that moment on, while that's the peak for you, I guess, not necessarily overall, but in terms of the Black Ops 4 season, that was definitely the peak. What followed wasn't necessarily, I guess the best thing in the world, because then you didn't get the chance to return for Champs. Now, I guess this is going to be a bit of a sore subject to talk about, but what, I guess, from your perspective was what happened with that Champs? Because I expected you to return to Champs. I think everyone, given the success and the positive reception that the announcements of yourself and Sean received upon joining the Anaheim talent pool, what was it like sort of not getting the chance to return?
It was tough, man. I'll tell you flat out. After Anaheim was over, immediately afterwards, I thought that I had just an okay performance at Anaheim. And then I took a week and eventually went back after that 7-day period, went back and rewatched the games that I casted in VOD review fashion. I was like, wait, I actually kind of crushed some of these calls. Like, I felt really positive about some of them. And the response that I got from the people that were involved with the open stream was immensely positive. Will Abreu, again, really liked what I had to offer. We got on really nicely together. Spaceman and I thought we had a lot of synergy. Chris said that, between Spaceman and myself, he thinks that this was, the best move possible to bring in people that knew how to obviously cast Call of Duty. And the addition of Alley Cat, like you mentioned, she was playing. So, I mean, that was, again, to your point, that was the first event at that time that had new talent that were all Call of Duty centered. Because back in Vegas, I think Veli was the guy who was there.
I think Veli was there for New Orleans. I don't know if it was New Orleans. We had an event that year. It was like the second event that Veli was there.
That was World War II that he was at New Orleans, I think.
It was the second. So first event, I remember it was Dirk and Blaze that were casting with Ton and Bryce.
Yes, it was that. That's right. It was. It must have been
Rich
Fort
and
Worth.
Valley. Fort Worth. There you go.
Yeah. Because Onset was with Lottie and them at London that year. So yeah, that's absolutely right. So I guess outside of London, that was the first North American event in some time that had been like big time dedicated people to the amateur scene specifically. Because at that time, Dirk was still doing the NBA 2K stuff like as his main focus.
Even then, though, I was sad he didn't return. Like, because he was a good Call of Duty caster.
I'm a big Dirk fan. Like,
oh yeah.
I don't actually know him at all. I don't think we've ever actually traded messages back and forth, but like as a career standpoint, I have been like so invested into Dirk, like going from the NBA 2K League to now like trying to play and like not getting a chance like through the draft was like the most heartbreaking thing I've seen in like esports. Like
it's so
period.
Rough. Yeah.
So like period. If you don't know that story, like just try to check up on it. It's a really special story. But after Anaheim, I thought I had a lot of positive responses. Will and a couple of people were like, we'll see you at Miami. We'll see you at Champs. Like, they had, like, essentially said that. And I was like, okay, sounds good.
I'm not going to say no to that.
Absolutely. And then Miami was starting to roll around. I hadn't heard anything. But the thing was, neither had Spaceman or neither had Chris. We had stayed in touch relatively regularly after Anaheim, and at the point like a week and a half before, no one had heard anything, and then it got to a couple of days later and everyone started posting kind of like passive messages on Twitter, like the contract signed and stuff like that, and I was like, what's going on? And so I tried sending a couple of messages over to like Will, and he was like, I didn't make the call. I couldn't make the call. I pushed for you, but they decided to go another direction. And that was when they just had Space and Allie back with Rich. And the reasoning that I ended up getting later was that Rich had already been signed to that event, like after Fort Worth, I think was the last time that he had hosted the desk, I think, for Open. So I was like, all right, okay, that makes sense. At that point in time, Spaceman had been doing a lot alongside Halo and all that stuff like that. And I was like, okay, he's more well known than I am. I get that. Alley Cat, Sure, okay, maybe I was just the one that was left out. Maybe I just wasn't as well known.
Yeah.
Who knows? But after Miami, Will actually had a trip out here in North Carolina, about 40 minutes away, and we ended up meeting up for coffee. And we spent some time talking and stuff like that. And he kind of gave out, that's when I kind of learned about the Rich thing. And, you know, maybe it was just they picked those two guys because they knew them better, you know, who knows? But he was like, but the cast is going to expand for World Championship. So, you know, I'm going to keep pushing for you to get there. But then they signed on Lando, who personally is like the one guy in Call of Duty that I've wanted to cast with for like forever. Like I feel like me and him would get on so well on a cast, but and then they brought in Blaze simply due to the fact that I think they had someone else who was already set up to do like a lot of the offstage hype moments for World Championships. So I was like, oh,
yeah,
it hurt, man. I'm not gonna lie,
it was, right?
It was tough, and the biggest thing for me as far as why it was tough was not necessarily not being chosen, but it turned the following off season into just much bigger question marks. You know, I started to second guess myself as far as where I was in the totem pole. Like, if there were to be people to cast the official challengers bracket this upcoming year, would I even be in consideration? Like, you know, maybe I'm just not there yet. Like, it just threw so many question marks into the span as far as like, from a financial standpoint, is this the right move for me? You know, because again, at this point now, it's been a year and a half since that money came through, and it's not all there anymore. I mean, I've been living off of it for almost 2 years. And so like finances were starting to get a little rough, and I had to start making some decisions as far as like, is at this point, because I'm almost 32, is even casting esports a realistic, you know, goal for me? Like, am I gonna be able to make this a professional career? And I think that question mark still lingers. You know, I'm making it work right now, but it just was one of those things that I knew the offseason was going to be rough, even if I was having the chance to do Miami and World Championships, considering that we were going to a franchise league. Everything we knew was going to change. That just puts in so many different wild cards. And not being at Miami and not being at championships, as much as it sucks to not be there and follow up with the storylines that I had kind of personally been invested into, was one part of that hurt. But the bigger thing was just the giant looming question marks of what happens next for me, I think was the biggest thing about that event. Because, I mean, the people that were on that broadcast crew, and it was tough because Twitter was not happy not seeing me, but at the end of the day, like, we all have to support each other in this environment. And I thought that everyone did a very good job. You know, I spent more time, I would say, watching World Championships on the Charlie and Delta streams than I did on the Alpha and Bravo streams. And I thought everyone did an incredible job. So it was tough to like sit there and want to say like, yeah, I want to be there. But at the same point, like, guys, we have to love on each other. Like, this is everyone's doing an incredible job. No one's like completely sucking at what's going on right now. Like, just give them your support. It hurts to not be there, but I think the biggest thing was not in the real moment of like presently being there, but just kind of having the question marks in the spanner as far as, well, what do I have to do, you know, to get that chance next time? You know, I've kind of felt it more of a challenge of what do I have to do next to be that consideration without question next time. So it just put me in a real big weird spot simply because I just wasn't sure where I stood, and I think professionally it just added more question marks. Is this realistic? So that was the hardest part about it, I think.
Yeah, and I think as we got, I mean, Champs is like, so it was such a good event as well. Like, it was so horrible.
It was an incredible event.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
There was like 3. I think it was like Singularity, War, or it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't War at the time. I can't remember. Whatever org that Dave was under at the time. It might have been War. I don't know.
It was War.
It was War,
but
right?
It was like Units was like not
top
playing
6,
well in the
right?
CWL, and then they finished top 6.
It's crazy.
Like, what
Enigma 6, top 4 as well. Like,
yeah, dude. I'm not as surprised by that one. I've been sitting on the Enigma 6 hype train since that roster was essentially put together. Everyone second guessed, and Jordan General, if he watches this, he knows that I got his back, dude. I still maintain that Jordan General was a top 3 AR in Black Ops.
Yeah. Also, cool right now as well. That's related to this. Insight is a top like 4, top 5 AR in the world right now. I think so. Like, he's fucking insane. And that is 100% like a cool. If anyone watches Singularity, they're incredible. But where was I even though with that whole exchange? Champs is an incredible event, right? And I think it was such an amazing event to end the Call of Duty Black Ops 4 season. But not only did it end the Call of Duty Black Ops 4 season, it ended the era of open teams having the chance to literally challenge. I use the word challenge selectively, the top professional teams. Instead now, the system has changed dramatically, and I kind of want to get sort of where your head at is with this. Now, I know there's only so much you can say, Shift, out of professional integrity, and of course a lot more, not more reasons, but challenges and the CDL, the current system, I mean, where do you stand on it? Because this year it's a test for Call of Duty. We've had the first franchise league. I mean, it obviously based off the new Overwatch model, and the amateur scene in challenges, I think, has really seen some serious challenges thrown its way this year. I mean, where do your thoughts lie this year with Call of Duty?
Again, this year was not a surprise to me as far as format stuff was.
I mean, everyone knew it was going to happen.
And it wasn't just that everyone knew it was going to happen. Again, being at the time, when Contenders and Overwatch was kind of on a little bit of a rise, like, I learned a lot about what Activision Blizzard is trying to set up from a professional standpoint. And when you've got a franchise league, you can't allow people that aren't franchised to potentially beat those teams. That's such that's just, it's so bad for so many reasons.
By the way, they would.
And yes, probably. Like, there are a handful of teams that would, I'm sure if they were to play 5 times, they would win at least twice against some of these squads. I mean, just flat out. And the simple fact of the matter is, for a world championship format, I knew immediately that the playoffs were going to be abbreviated amount of teams from even the Pro League, and it wasn't going to include any moment in the regular season at all where there was going to be a chance for an amateur team to play up against professional. It just would cause so many issues for so many ways, and we don't have the time to talk about why. It's just like, again, like if let's just go back and say like the Cleveland Browns were to play up against the University of Alabama in football. This is going to be a completely lost reference for you.
I was going to say.
Hopefully your audience gets this. How about this?
Let's make it a soccer reference.
The under 21 team for like the UK World Nationals under 21 team.
Oh God.
Played up against some other World Cup team.
Right.
Like,
yep.
This conversation actually happens a lot because like the I think like the 15 and under team of like the Dallas team, the FC Dallas team here, played up against the women's national team. Like, and the women's national team, like that is so bad for so many reasons. And it's kind of the same thing when it comes to an amateur team beating a franchise squad.
Yeah. But the implications are worse, is right? Because
you put up $25 million, and the integrity of your brand is going to be slandered all over the place if you lose to an amateur team. It's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. But as far as the format that was set up for challengers, up until this coronavirus stuff, I was perfectly fine with. I think that the system made sense. I think it gave everyone an opportunity at multitude of ranges. Even if it was, like we saw, like it's only 32 teams max, and they're trying to just appeal to their local market. It's only $10,000. I think that's fine. The difference that I would have liked to have seen from the challengers format, pending that there was no worldwide pandemic, was you set up majors and you set up minors. Here are your major tournaments that are $25,000 plus. A team like LA, a team like Chicago, a team like Dallas, that were all going to have $25,000 events, could have maybe submitted a request to be considered a major event where we'll open up our team pass sales to 100 and whatever, and we'll do $25,000. They will instantly become a major, and that will at least give players that are going seriously through the path to pro okay, we have to be at this event.
Yep.
Whereas events like London would have been considered a minor, where it was just $10,000, low amount of entries. You're trying just to appeal to the regional fan base and player base in the UK. You saw no North American teams travel to it, not only because it was only $10,000, but it was across the pond. But that's the system that I would like to see kind of put into place, where there were minors and majors, because that at least gives people a basis of, all right, we don't have to be at every single event. That's the biggest thing, because there is no way. We talked about this extensively with multiple people at the beginning of the year. that there's no way that this challenger system works if players feel like they have to be at every single event, because there's no way you're taking the same 5.
Right?
Yeah,
absolutely. Like War, there was a big issue with them very recently. I mean, this podcast is going out tomorrow, as is when this is recorded. But for those of you who don't know, War, very recently, the roster left the War side because they wanted to travel to more events, which is a thing.
Yeah, and I can understand it. From their perspective, I forget what the whole specific stipulation was, but it was like, we'll take your best, like, 3 finishes at homestand events, and then also it was supposed to be, like, your points from the Minnesota event, what was supposed to be a mid-season event,
which
and
isn't happening anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't happening anyway.
Finals.
Because of it was like, it wasn't happening for the pros, but it might have been happening for the challengers circuit, and now it's
that's what
not
I had heard
happening
as well.
for either because of COVID-19.
Right.
I mean, it's not confirmed it's not happening, but like, oh no, it must be confirmed when it's not happening, because they just came out and said that all the events are post-cancelled, I suppose, and we played online. Regardless, so your opinion is actually, I think, fairly different to most people.
I love
it. Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough. I mean, if we all agreed at the end of the day, the world would be fucking boring. But I think most people, this season have had some serious issues in terms of the way challenges set up. Personally, and I've expressed these views to the guys at Challenges, they know how I feel about it. Personally, I wish, just to preface this by saying this is not the first time I said this, I personally feel like less events would be the way forward, and even if you were to spread out your budget, because obviously, and this is for most people at home, most people who watch this on Beyond the Call, maybe you quite don't understand that there is a set budget to things like these. Like the Challengers team will have a budget, and then they'll spread it out across the events and such, and that goes to production too. But I would kind of like to see the prize pools of these mini, as you called, minors, lessened, and as you say, some actual major events being brought in, like you had last year. We had these 4 major opens across the year. I kind of would have liked that. I think the biggest issue this year, though, people have had, and I think you kind of knew this was coming, was the production. Now, I'll preface this again by saying that there is a huge cost to production. I learned what it was very recently, how much it actually costs to put together a proper stream for Challenges, and I can completely fucking understand why there isn't one. But what's your perspective on the whole sort of no streams for Challenges, and what really should we do about it?
I think that me and you are in the same ballpark. Mm-hmm. So if people that are out there know your vision, it's probably similar to mine. It is a little bit of a crime to not see these guys play at all, essentially, outside of their personal stream. Now, that said, it's a weird line, because like you mentioned, for them, what the open desk looked like last year is not cheap to put on. It's a full production team just for that stream. Dedicated producer, dedicated person on sound, dedicated person on lights, dedicated person on observing, dedicated person on just what the cameras look like, dedicated person that is running the actual desk. You actually have your talent manager that's there, kind of, do you need water? What do you need? It's not just 2 people and an observer that you need, which I think a lot of people feel like. Now, the other side of it is, I think for the people that were watching the open division last year in the first place, they would have been fine just seeing 2 people in a very minimal desk every now and again, and then seeing the gameplay. And at that point, and I know that you guys were this close to doing a live broadcast at London, and obviously now that we've done rebroadcasts of Paris and Atlanta,
which are awesome as well. We'll get to that in a second.
It's one of those things that I think the people that would have wanted to watch that broadcast would not have cared what it looked like. The problem with that is the people that are putting on the production still have a standard to maintain. So it's like this weird, 2 negative ends of a magnet pushing up against each other. We both want to meet in the middle, but we can't. We just physically it's just not possible. And then there is also people like you and me who would be like, I will literally do this for the cheapest amount of money that you could possibly offer me. But at the same point, kind of knowing about Activision Blizzard, they're not going to allow people to work it for free. That just opens up too much of a back end of a can of worms that could be there. And if you're going to pay somebody, you take care of them to the point where they're comfortable. And that's the biggest thing when it comes down to, again, the schedule of how many events there were. You can't realistically, with a brand new partnership deal with a streaming platform that you're trying to build your numbers on, sit there and say, yes, we're also going to commit this much money and this much upkeep to running a second YouTube stream just for challengers when there's an event every single weekend. The oncoming of that potentially happening was going to be way overwhelming for anybody. And I think that is where the handcuff exists. Now, the thing about it is going into the future with, everything being online is I hope that once we start to get full announcements as far as scheduling goes, that there is the opportunity to bring in casters remotely for a production,
it's so much
do
cheaper.
Stuff for challengers.
Yeah.
It's so much cheaper. Logistically, it's easier. It's not just like you could be paying your talent the same amount. It's the fact that you don't have to take care of their food, you don't have to take care of their housing, you don't have to take care of their travel, and right there, that's 3 times more than what you're probably paying them on their daily rate. So, it's definitely much more manageable, and I hope that with that there is a way that we could meet in the middle and make some broadcasts happen. Because, again, pending the fact that next year there's expansion teams. Which we don't know. They might limit it because we know how quickly they expanded an Overwatch League and how that didn't solve the initial problems that kind of arose after the first season. There very well might not be any expansion teams next year. But if there were, you feel like potential bidders to get into the scene are going to want to know at least some tangible value as far as who should I be picking up. And at the moment, it's just going to be word of mouth, which is where we currently have for the CDL. And we know how some of those teams are faring. So
yeah, I mean, at the start of the season was hilarious because everyone was picking up their friends as subs.
Rough,
now they're having to pick up the pieces. I mean, to be fair, they've picked up the pieces fairly well. I mean, Mac joining the New York subline is one of the best pickups of all time. But yeah, I mean, that's a good insight actually, because I think people don't quite understand. I mean, I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here a little bit because at the start of the season I was kind of like, I was so skeptical of what was going on. Like, I was super pissed. I got to say, like, at the start of the season, I think before London and at London, which is where I actually had the conversation about it, it was kind of like I was so mad about what was happening to challengers. It kind of like, because I care about it deeply, and I know you do too. It's so rough. But as you say, it's kind of like, it's hard because, again, the CDL, they have a standard they have to set, and they can't really meet that when they're doing the streams. That being said, the community itself has reacted relatively well and relatively proactively in regard to it. Now, you yourself, you've had a very, very important role in making sure that we do what we can to help challengers in its current format. With what you talked about there with the rebroadcasts. Now, I think we've seen 3 so far, right? We've seen Atlanta, Paris, and LA. All of which have been incredible. Just sort of talk us through the process of how you sort of got that set up and why I think you wanted to do it.
Yeah, so it all happened in real time at LA. Guy by the name of Matt is, at least as far as I don't know what his specific title is, but in practicum, he is the guy from Activision Blizzard in the CDL that oversees the homestand challenger events being ran. He's like the head admin for it. He makes sure logistically everything's running fine. He is the overseer of all things going on in the challengers division. And at Atlanta, I had put out a tweet. I forget what exactly it was about, but talking about, what would be the possibility in some fashion of us bringing out the finals of the challenger scene. And he immediately DM'd me and said, "Do you have your stuff with you?" And I was like, "I don't have it with me, but it's closed." He's like, "Come up to the challengers booth." And so I dropped what I was doing. It was right during the Atlanta and who were they playing?
This would not be lost on me.
I forget who they were playing, but it was their first round of the playoffs. And I left. I just got up from the group that I was watching with, middle of like search and destroy, left, went to the challengers booth. And he was like, "How long is it going to take you to get your stuff?" And I was like, "Probably 20 minutes. Why?" He's like, "Shit." And I was like, "Tell me what you're thinking right now, because if we could bring a live stream out, let's find a way to get like an Elgato from the booths that were running the gunfight things. They've got one. They've been running this, like they've been running it through a program feed. They've got an Elgato over there." He's like, "Right." And so we tried to get their Gato, and the whole idea was that we were going to try to just locally record it. We were not going to fully broadcast it. We were going to locally record it. And Matt's idea was, if we locally record this, we can at least have it, so that way if we are able to do a rebroadcast of it, or at least make the discussion happen for it, we at least have the footage to do it. And then, push come to shove, if no one gets on board to officially do a rebroadcast, we'll probably be posting this on the official YouTube, and you do whatever you want for your own user content. And so we did the local broadcast of it, saved it to a PS4, moved it to an external hard drive. And then that night we sat down and had a couple of drinks, and we're just talking about like, what could we do to just do something? Because he's in the same ballpark as we are. Between him and Jack, they are both wanting to do more for challengers, but aren't exactly sure how they could make it happen on an official level, because let's be honest, again, there has not been an official broadcast.
The budget's not there. I mean,
so
what can
exactly.
You do?
So what can we do? And that was the whole conversation. And Matt and I had came to the idea of, I've got people in mind that are very talented with casters. I got a very talented bunch of producers that would be able to put together a reasonable but still slick looking package that would make it feel very, very good and very, very clean. And we ended up taking that conversation to the guys at the Atlanta FaZe. They were very open to running it on their YouTube, and that was when we officially got permissions for Activision Blizzard saying, yes, Atlanta FaZe, you are allowed to redistribute our official footage. Not going to pay for it, but you have the rights to run this, essentially. Because they would have had stipulations like, if we run something that's not officially sanctioned by the CDL, we could be like fined, like flat out. And so that all came through, and that was the first step of it. And the response was positive for the most part all the way through. We had a couple of hiccups on our end, but what we were able to put out was still at a level where everyone felt good about it. So that's where the conversation had started, and then it turned into the ability to run things on a more regular basis. So it, again, kind of sucks that we're in a position now where homestand events aren't happening anymore because we aren't able to even at least do a rebroadcast of these. So again, it's just tough with how the world is right now. But yeah, you got to give massive shout outs to people like Jack Felling and Matt.
100%. Nobody sees these guys as well.
Nobody sees them. And the amount of work and attention they do is absolutely nuts.
It's incredible. And I think there are a lot of people right now holding up challenges, and that's not to say it would collapse without them. Of course, like everyone, challenges would still go on, and there would still be these tournaments. But there are a number of people from yourself as and the casters that help out with the rebroadcast, to the production team. I think Pistachio did the LA and the Paris ones. I think the CCL guys did Atlanta, right? I could be wrong in saying that, yeah. And then beyond that as well, as you say, everyone in challenges. I think Jack and Dotzeb, both people who are incredible and they know what they're doing, and want to help challenges. And it goes beyond that as well. I think we've got Alicia who does CDC update. Like, there is a group of people right now who are trying to help challenges.
The passion's super high.
Yeah, like, I think if the communities comes together, there is a lot that we can do. I think that much is clear. Like, I think we can probably ourselves salvage a lot out of this season. And now that it's going online, there is a lot more potential, as we said earlier, Shift, that challenges could... I mean, we're not going to promise anything. We can't say here that it is going to happen. But I can't see, homestands now turning around and not taking this opportunity, even though I guess it's a bit opportunistic considering the disaster that's going on in the world right now, taking the opportunity to have these games casted. Because, I mean, Toronto just did it. Toronto were already planning to, but they were the
first ones.
Yeah, they just did their, I don't know what the name of the tournament was now, but it was the, 13.5 grand in online tournament. The production was great. The casting is incredible. I mean, shout out to Vision, Shyway, and I don't know who the last guy was. Beatdown, yeah.
One of my Overwatch homies,
Yeah, they were all, I think, Shyway came from Halo, right? And as you say...
Halo or Gears, one of the two, if not both. I don't remember which.
All incredible, and shout out to you guys. You did a great. But as we said, there is a lot of people right now who care about challenges and who will do what they can to salvage out of this season. I want to close on a couple of questions though, Shift, for you. How do you see the rest of this season going? And I do want to ask, because you worked on Overwatch, I guess, Path to Pro, as it were. If you compare that to this, to challenges.
Oh, man.
Do you see us getting that? Because I said before challenges even happened, that Path to Pro, that kind of production, that kind of level of support is what challenges deserves, right? That's what would be awesome. Do you see us getting to that kind of level of having those kind of systems in place in the next couple of years for challenges?
I personally think that Overwatch Path to Pro is a massive question mark. Yes, they run broadcasts, but the format, at least as I can gather and remember, has been different every single year. And on a personal level, this current one provides the biggest eyebrow raises, I feel like, because it's all single elimination tournaments on a weekly basis. And if you just have a bad day,
you
might not be in challengers the next week. Like it's a really interesting system, to say the least. And I don't think it's one that is necessarily going to represent the best positive growth for that. I was a big fan of a 10-team, 5-week regular season that everybody played each other at least one. And that turned into a playoffs, because then you are sticking with the same squad, mostly of people, for a month and a half to 2 months. And we get none of that in Challenge. We didn't even talk about the fact that North America Challengers is like, well, we finished top 8. Let's go make a bunch of new teams.
Just don't.
It's the worst thing that could possibly be happening in Call of Duty Path to Pro. But that said, because there is such a more deeply enriched history in amateur Call of Duty, I think that Call of Duty Challengers will surpass Overwatch Contenders easily, without question. The amount of players that play, the amount of events that happen, the amount of people who watch are astronomically higher than the people who support the tier 2 of Overwatch. It's not even close. It's not even close. So as far as the future outlook goes, it's weird, because Overwatch has a team that's in place. Dan McHugh is the guy that runs Overwatch Contenders, and he does a very good job integrating his community, putting the people in place, making sure there's a good broadcast on board with talented individuals. He runs a very tight ship over there, and it's just so strange to see a more enriched amateur competitive scene not necessarily have that same attention. But that to be said, the first year that Overwatch went purely competitive, Contenders was barely even a thing. So if we were to do a side-by-side comparison, year 1 for each has been nearly identical, with the only exception that technically Contenders has had more investment because they have $1 million worth of prize pool to play with. I mean, again, before worldwide pandemic, that is already a much different path than what opening Contenders players had in Overwatch. Like, it's not even close. And I think with that in mind, the amount of financial support that's being at least thrown that way to Call of Duty Contenders, it's only a matter of time before the broadcast package that like you and I are looking at follows and is done at the same, if not better level than what Overwatch Contenders has been able to do over the last handful of years. So I think as far as the outlook goes, yeah, this year's a little bit rough. It's maybe not ideal to how it was set up initially, whether you wanted to be majors or minors, or personally, the ideal thing would have been setting up like a top 12 teams from each region and have them play in an online league. But we know online COD is a volatile monster. The way that it was set up may not have been perfect, but the fact that so much money has been thrown its way is showing that the attention and the eye is being at least lended that direction to the amateur scene of Call of Duty. And I think that bodes very well for the future. Whether that's the finish up this year or especially as it goes into the next season. I'm very excited to see amateur Call of Duty, and I think it's going to load as long as the format for what's happening above it stays good, stays solid, and there's the right amount of investment being tossed to both the pro scene and the amateur scene. I think that has the potential to absolutely explode.
All right, and final question for you then, and we'll bring it back full circle, because we started this podcast to talk about you. And we'll end it talking about you for yourself, Shift, or Alan. Where do you see yourself in the next couple of years, as you say? I mean, I think it's fair to say that you are pretty well coupled with Call of Duty Challengers at this point in time. As I said, and I've been saying this throughout the entire podcast episode, is that you are a stalwart member of the Challengers scene in North America and in the world. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But for yourself, as a Call of Duty caster and as an esports cast generally, where do you see yourself in the near future, we'll say?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. Where would you want to be is probably a more apt question.
CDL desk. I think anybody would in our position would say that. We want to be in the Call of Duty League. Want to strap on that headset. I want to cast over 2 pro teams on a regular basis. That would be obviously where the goal lies currently, but at the same point, it is such a difficult path to navigate simply due to the fact that right now in esports as a whole, like not just Call of Duty, not just Overwatch, esports as a whole market does not have an established second tier. In professional sports, at least in the North American system, you've got professional, you've got college, you've got you've got professional, and for a lot of sports, you have like the semi-pros, their farm teams, their academy teams, if you want to call them that, and then you've got college, and then you've got high school, and all that kind of stuff. There is nothing like that in esports. You're either at the top, or you're in this 99% pool of people trying to make it. And it's very, very difficult because it's a catch-22 in the business right now where to work a major event or a major esport, you need to be represented by a talent agency. But to be represented by a talent agency, you have to have worked major events. Like that's the catch-22 right now. It's a circle of, the elites will stay elite because they found their timing, they found their path, they found whatever it was to get them there. And they're not going anywhere anytime soon unless they decide they want to retire. Which, to be fair, like we could be seeing more of that. Like there are a number of people in esports that either have casted and have retired away because their personal content is surpassing the amount of money that is currently being invested into broadcast talent in esports, or there might be considering doing that because of what I just mentioned. Like esports broadcast talent is not getting paid percentagely anywhere near close to like what NFL broadcasters are, or what football announcers are being paid. It's not even close. And for the elite talent, now they're starting to realize that I could be making more money from streaming every day. And there could potentially be a weird flux in the system where people are going to leave broadcasting to pursue their own individual things. And obviously for people like you and me, we're sitting there kind of saying, cool, I wouldn't be mad to see a day like that. But at the same point, as far as what the future looks like, it's a dog-eat-dog world right now with esports talent. I personally wish it wasn't. I have never been more so on the board of everyone should be helping each other, and the cream will rise to the top just by what individually they do past that to try to make sure that they're staying on top. And this isn't really like the full question, but one of my favorite moments from an esports caster was watching Uber, Overwatch League caster. He routinely in the offseason will do VOD reviews of other casters that are coming up and doing things of that nature. And I was watching him break down another guy that I'm close with in the Overwatch community, and he was like, I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty pissed right now. And he was like, why? He's like, you're good. And I feel like I need to go get better. And like that mentality is incredible because it's not like there are people out there, I could almost say for certainty, that are elite talent that they will see somebody who's up and coming, who's very talented, and they will do everything in their power to make sure that person does not get a chance because they're threatened of their job. But then you've got people like Mitch who see upcoming talent or see other people in the industry that are doing very well, and he sits there and says, I got to go get better. Like, I got to go individually work harder. Like, you're good. Like, good for you. Like, that's an incredible mindset to have. And I think that the esports scene as a whole, whether you're a player, a producer, observer, administrator, caster, whatever it happens to be, I think we need more of that if we want to see our industry grow rather than stay stagnant. And that, of course, means that for me, I'm looking to be as collaborative as possible with people that are around me. Just to try to give us all a chance to say that, again, individually, here's how I kind of see it as far as the immediate future question. I know I'm kind of dancing around it.
It's fine. I enjoy
it. Immediate future-wise, I want to be a consideration for the challenger scene as a broadcast talent. I can't do that individually. I simply put, if the CDL, if they see just me and they say, we want IHOLDSHIFT to do challenger,
who else
is going to do it? You know what I mean? Like, that might be the problem, is that they don't know enough people to do it. And the other side of things is, when you surround yourself with great people, greatness comes, whether it's individually or as a group. And that's the kind of mindset that, I really hope takes off in this really weird pandemic time. It's so hard to know what our future is going to rely on. But, I think collectively as a community, we can make something special happen. So that's what I'm hoping, is that the immediate future turns into a more elongated.
All right. Well, the final word from Shift. Thank you so much for coming on, Alan. It's been an incredible hour. Honestly, I think it's been so insightful. And for anybody who wishes to ever step into Call of Duty casting, I think, or just esports casting in general, I think Alan's footsteps are great ones to follow in. I hope you all have learned something today in class, in online class. Thank you again, Shift, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, man. It's a pleasure. I think content like this deserves more of a spotlight. So I know sometimes it could be tough when you look at your numbers and stuff like that, but this content is great. So keep doing the stuff you guys are doing. It's incredible.
Thank you much. Thank you much. Thank you very much. Oh, well, I've messed up this ending. Regardless, guys, again, if you are new to the 1v1 show, or you're new to Beyond the Call, of course, we've got a plethora of content here on this Twitch channel. So please do follow or subscribe if you do have some Twitch Prime lying around. And if you are watching this live, or if you're watching this on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, then, of course, we will be premiering every episode live at 8 p.m. GMT. For American time, I think that's like 3 p.m. In your time at the moment, God knows. 3 p.m. EST, so work that out if you're on the West Coast. You're inferior. But regardless, thank you so much for watching this episode of the 1v1 show, and we'll see you guys next week.